Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Obviously, I put a poll to you guys the other day, and you voted that this is the video I should be doing for my Sundance catch-up and to let you guys know on what films I saw and what you should check out for yourselves. I was very lucky. This was my very first Sundance experience. Of course, it was only online, and of course, the situation kind of compounded itself when I got COVID from my mom. And me and my buddy Zach, you've probably seen on the channel, we were planning to watch some movies at my house, you know, bring them over, and we would sit down and you know, just go through whatever we had. And unfortunately, circumstances could not facilitate that. But I was fortunate enough to still grab some tickets to some other movies. And I'll tell you, I mean, that's probably the way to go. Because, of course, you know, you want to make sure you get a few tickets for movies you really want to see. But if you're not sure about how the movie is going to be, what the quality of it will end up being, don't buy the tickets. Just wait till the screenings come out. Because, honestly, compared to what Zach may have had, I think I lucked out. Sorry, Zach, about that. I'll make it up to you some other time. But yeah, so I luckily got to see some pretty great films overall for my first time around at Sundance, and that is definitely what I'm going to get in with you guys today. And for the first film I saw at the Sundance Film Festival was Daughters, directed by Angela Patton and Natalie Ray, and it follows four daughters as they prepare to go see their incarcerated fathers in prison with this program actually implemented by Angela Patton in Washington, D.C. that's sort of a rehabilitation seminar for incarcerated fathers in prison where they can kind of talk to each other and, you know, discuss the ideas of, you know, the importance of being a father while being incarcerated, and also the effects of that on their entire family and how they can go forward and sort of, you know, create a better life for themselves but also for their family. And this was definitely the best film I saw out of these four that I'm going to review. I'll say right off the bat, I absolutely loved this documentary. Already one of the best films of the year, obviously, if this does get distribution in 2024. But I don't see how this one cannot be picked up. This is a gut-wrenching film to watch. I really don't think that you can sit down and watch this and not cry. It is legitimately so emotional and so real because this is a documentary, and just understanding that all of this actually happened is even more impressive. But just from a narrative standpoint, I think it really works. Of course, one of my small criticisms with the film, I wish we could have gotten to know some of the other incarcerated fathers, but of course, being around an hour and a half, you can only focus on so many subjects within a single piece. So I understand the director's decision to maybe not include everybody or to have chosen the subjects that they did, but my goodness, just the dynamics that come out of these families is so wrought sometimes, and also so tragic and heartbreaking, and also really, really warm at the same time. There's so many different emotions going on in this documentary, and just the subjects we follow. There's one girl, because obviously it takes place over a few years, but the one girl that you meet when she's 5 absolutely stole my heart, and if you've seen it, or if you're going to see it, you'll know who I'm talking about when you do. And oh my goodness, just that whole storyline between her and her father was really the heart and soul of a lot of this movie. But yet again, I feel like everybody is so well fleshed out, who they do focus on, that you really understand that it is maybe even more difficult for some of these daughters, you know, growing up without a father figure, and you get to see the impact that that has on their mind, you know, during this very integral period of development, and what that sense of abandonment, whether warranted or not, could do to a child. And I absolutely love that contrast too, that it isn't just the person being in prison who's incarcerated that's being affected by this. It affects everybody within their family circle. And I also love how they bring up the idea of generational incarceration and trauma. And I never really thought about it that way, but you see how this kind of situation is passed down from generation to generation. And this film really asks, like, what do you need to do to break the cycle? And I think that this program implemented by Angela Patton, who, by the way, is an absolute saint of a woman. I think she is such an incredibly compassionate, empathetic human being, really reassuring these girls, their self-value and worth, and also, trying to make these fathers better men in this program. And once again, it all comes ahead when the dance actually happens, and oh my goodness, that is when the tears are going to flow, because yet again, I don't think, I heard at the festival there wasn't a dry eye in the theater, and just some of the emotional turmoil that comes along with, being reunited with your parents, your daughter, vice versa, is so raw, just watching it unfold on screen, and so many other things that happen at that one singular dance. You almost wish it could last forever, just to soak in everything that's going on, but also for these people involved, because you can tell how meaningful of an experience it was to them. And you also get to see what happened later on to some of these people involved, and I won't give anything away because you gotta see it, but yet again, I thought it was just going to end at the dance, and I'm so glad it didn't. The fact that it kept going really felt like a full story, and you really get to see how these people emotionally evolve, especially these girls, over the years, and it just left me in a place that I just felt so emotionally moved by, intellectually satisfied by, and also really glad that this film exists. This is a program that should be implemented at all different prisons. I think it's really important, to see the effects that this has on so many different people. I hear it's going to have a prison tour, which is going to be really great for people to get to see this, and I hope that this program really makes a difference, as well as this film, because this is a film that legitimately can change lives. And yet again, I thought there were parts of it that may have seemed a bit repetitive, narratively speaking, but it's a documentary, so not too much you can do. So on that note, I'm going to give Daughters a 9 out of 10. Absolutely the best film I got a chance to see at Sundance, and obviously I'm hoping that it gets picked up by a big distributor, gets released this year, and when it does, you best be sure to check out for it, because this is one you do not want to miss. The next film I got to see at Sundance was Exhibiting Forgiveness, written and directed by Titus Kauffer, starring Andre Holland, Andra Day, Ingenue Ellis-Taylor, and John Earl Jelks, and this follows an artist played by Andre Holland who has to reckon with the possibility of reconnecting with his abusive father after his mother asks him, after all these years of not having seen him. And the film dives a lot into the emotional, deep-rooted parental trauma that comes along with it, and the conversations that these characters have are so thought-provoking, and yet again, kind of similar to Daughters in a sense, where you really see how trauma's very generational, and I think this movie especially nails that fact. There's one scene between Andre Holland and John Earl Jelks in the middle of this movie where John Earl Jelks is just telling him something that happened when he was younger that his father did to him, and it is legitimately one of the most unnerving and riveting scenes I've seen so far in any film this year. And I just got to talk about the performances real quick, because if this movie takes off in the way it should, I can really see at least 3 of these performers getting nominated for Oscars, especially Andre Holland. I mean, I knew he was great when I saw him for the first time back in Moonlight in 2016, but this is easily the best work of his entire career. It is so emotionally raw, and yet again, it feels so real and true to the situation which he's in. It's very down to earth, and in a way that isn't judgmental, and I feel like this whole movie is very non-judgmental about all of its characters, which gives it a much more even-handed approach. But Andre Holland especially, I mean, there's one monologue near the end of this movie, and I was like, geez, man, I legitimately don't think there will be many better acted scenes for all of this year than Andre Holland in that scene. And I really hope that he does get a Best Oscar nomination a year from now at the next Academy Awards. I just think he's absolutely terrific in this, and I really hope this is the role that catapults him to an even higher status. And of course, Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, I think, could be looking at her second Oscar nomination after King Richard. And I think she's even better here. So I don't know what that tells you, but she really is the emotional crux of this entire film and the reason that all of this is unfolding in the first place. And yet again, I just think the gravitas she brings to her presence on screen, and of course every single line of dialogue, every single facial reaction she has, it's an absolutely incredible supporting turn, and I think one of the first standout ones of the entire year. The same could be said for John Earl Jelks, who plays the abusive father in this, and I think he was absolutely incredible. And yet again, he could have just been a two-dimensional villain, but he kind of reminded me of Terrence Fletcher in Whiplash. Not in the sense that, this is anywhere near as good as Whiplash or the same thing at all, but yet again, you see him do these horrible things to his son, and then you listen to his justification. It's like, well, yeah, you're going about this a totally wrong way, but you can understand where he's coming from, as horrible as it sounds. Yet again, it's understanding these characters that I think really makes this film work. Andra Day's great too, of course, a previous Oscar nominee, but she isn't given a whole lot to do. I think that she isn't just like the dutiful wife character, because I feel like the dynamic between her and Andre Holland feels very realistic, and she is given a lot to do, and so I don't, knock the film for that. The one issue I did have with it is there was a brother character who adds absolutely nothing to this movie. He's just there to tell the main character something, and I thought it was really unnecessary. And sure, it may take a little while to get into this film fully, but regardless, I think this is one of the most emotionally riveting films you're going to see in all of 2024, with one of the best cast of the year, hands down, and I think one that really warrants a lot of Oscar potential, especially for the performers involved. And yet again, a beautiful, beautiful movie from a filmmaker I cannot wait to see what he does in the future. So I'm going to give Exhibiting Forgiveness an 8.5 out of 10. This is definitely one you're going to want to check out as soon as it comes out. I feel like this really could blow up to be an awards contender, or it's going to go the way of 1001, which obviously got quite a few critics nominations, a few Indie Spirit Awards, whatnot. This could get a DGA for first feature film, but yet again, we'll have to see how this really pans out, what distribution it gets, because that is really going to be telling to this film's success, and I really am rooting for everybody involved that they get the recognition they deserve, because yeah, this is definitely going to be one you need to see as soon as it comes out. And the next film up on the docket that I saw was Rob Peace, written and directed by Chiwetel Ejiofor, starring Camila Cabello, Jay Will, Mary J. Blige, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. And this follows the real-life story of Rob Peace, who was an inner-city Newark kid who got the chance to go to Yale and became a biochemist major, learned a lot about the inner workings of his craft, and then eventually also resorted to drug dealing, specifically marijuana, on the side to help support his family and all else going on in his life. And this is, of course, Chiwetel Ejiofor's second feature film. I didn't get a chance to see his first, though I heard it was quite good. I really wanted to, give this man support. I love Chiwetel Ejiofor as an actor, and I really wanted to see what he could do behind the camera. Now, one thing I will say about Chiwetel Ejiofor as a director, he's obviously amazing with actors, and Jay Will as Rob Peace, the lead here, is such an incredible find. This guy has such a natural charisma where you believe him as this person every single second along the way. He seems like one of the guys that you just have in one of your classes that you'd hang out with. Maybe smoke a little bit with. He's just such a believable and down-to-earth performer for this portrayal of this character, and I think he is definitely someone I want to be looking out for in other projects, of course. And yet again, I think without him, this movie doesn't really quite work. So Chiwetel Ejiofor definitely nailed that casting choice. And of course, him as Rob's father is absolutely the other, strongest link of this film. And their relationship, their dynamic is really the heart of this entire film, and I think informs a lot of the decisions that Rob makes, either good or bad. It's definitely a very interesting dynamic coming from an inner city sort of area, and how that affects Rob's mentality for the rest of his life. I think it's really, really telling and very, very specific in a way that not a lot of other movies are. And yet again, we're bringing up incarceration again, but I think that this movie really taps into the effects that has on the entire family. Yet again, I mean, what is it with all these movies with black trauma? I mean, are there any other movies I watched at Sundance? Well, there is one, and I'll get into it. But yet again, I think it's still a profound example to look at and how it is portrayed in this film. Mary J. Blige as Rob's mother is also very good, though she doesn't get as much screen time. And of course, Camila Cabello plays his girlfriend that he meets at Yale, and she's pretty good in this. She gets a few good scenes, but I don't think that there is a whole lot to her character, to be honest. Of course, she's there to support him or whatever, and she has her own thing going on. But yet again, you don't really get to fully know her as a person. I feel like the story really is solely focused on Rob and his father, almost to a fault, because yet again, I don't think everyone gets the full amount of development. But one of my biggest issues with this film is I think Chiwetel Ejiofor's vision as a director is fairly standard. The film doesn't really stand out in any innovative or creative way, which I suppose is fine, but I really feel like that is something Chiwetel Ejiofor can really hone in on his next film, making a more visual, a more bold piece that stands on its own. And yet again, I just think the story told here, it's very tragic, it's quite powerful in a lot of ways, but I feel like the film is very by the numbers. I don't think it does anything interestingly narratively speaking, and I also think that the pacing of this film is really off, and I think it really drags in a lot of places just because, yet again, it isn't as finely tuned as it could have been. I understand that this story, there's a lot that they had to cut out, and they had to really focus on what to leave in, but it just doesn't feel like a holistic experience from start to finish in the way some of the best scripts that we love, like Oppenheimer, for instance. It doesn't feel very tight. And that was a bit of a letdown because just the duality of the story alone, I thought would have been, the sell and the reason I bought the ticket, and just the cast involved and the people behind the camera. Was very excited to see this one. I wouldn't say I was disappointed necessarily, but I certainly think that there's a lot of room for improvement going forward for Ejiofor as a director. And so I'm going to give Rob Peace a 7 out of 10. Definitely a very important story that speaks to, the systems we have in place in this country, especially when it comes to black communities. And yet again, nothing new that we haven't seen already, and I mean that for the film as well. But definitely a film you want to check out if you're interested in the story at all. I think there's a lot to glean from it regardless, and I definitely think it's worth a watch at the very least. And for the last film I got a chance to see at Sundance 2024, I'll be talking about Dìdi, directed by Sean Wang, fresh off of an Oscar nomination for Best Documentary Short. And this film follows a 13-year-old Taiwanese-American boy in the summer of 2008 as he learns a lot about himself, who his friends are, his interest, what have you. It's a really, really specific coming-of-age film, and I really, really appreciate it for that, especially all the references to 2008. You get to see a lot of, MySpace, and there's, even a reference to the boys going to see The Dark Knight 8 times, and I just thought that was so funny. But yet again, this is a very specific period in time, and I think Sean Wang captures it so well. And I think Isaac Wang, who of course is playing the stand-in character Chris, for Sean's own life himself, I think is yet again another amazing find out of these Sundance movies. He is so charismatic on screen, and he hits all the emotions and emotional nuances that you would hope for a story like this, because Chris is not a very likable character, or at least in essence he shouldn't be. But at the same time, I feel like Isaac Wang really makes you understand and empathize with him regardless. Because you understand, like, if you've been 13 years old, you know how it is. I've related this movie quite a bit because I've been in many situations, or in situations where perhaps I was on the receiving end of things. Maybe just some pettiness from a friend, ignoring someone else to go hang out with, the other cooler group of kids. It's something that we can probably all relate to, like I said, but the way it's captured here is so true and so honest, and that's what I love about it more than anything, the honesty here, because yet again you see these kids saying like, oh, that's so gay, like all this stuff that would have been funny back in 2008. It really makes the time period feel very real, and I love that none of that was sugar-coated or kind of shied away from. But I think the family dynamic in this movie is what really works. Of course, his actual Nai, who was in Nai Waipo, which was nominated for the Oscar, of course, is absolutely amazing here. The fact that he gets his grandma to act so amazingly well on this. She feels like such a natural, and her comedic timing and presence is so welcome in this movie. She quite literally steals a couple scenes that she's in, and I think she was absolutely amazing, as is Shirley Chen as his sister in the story. And I feel like the way that relationship evolves from the beginning to the end of the movie is really surprising in more ways than one, but one I was really touched and moved by. But I think the real heart of the story, yet again, is the mother character played by Joan Chen, who, my goodness, I think is the best part of this entire thing. There's one scene at the end of this movie, yet again a monologue she gives, that is definitely going to be one of the most touching moments from any movie this year. And I absolutely love her dynamic with Isaac Wang in this film. It just feels so real, like this mother-son connection and relationship that is portrayed on screen. And I just think this film is going to be one of the funniest movies of the year. There are so many moments of just absolute cringe, especially, trying to figure yourself out and putting yourself in certain situations, trying to figure out what to say to someone else. It plays off so well. And I was quite literally dying at a couple of scenes in this film. Yet again, the humor here is just so genuine and authentic. It's legitimately funny, and everything about this film I think is just so relatable. Yet again, I can't emphasize that enough. Though I will say we've definitely seen this story told perhaps in a better way before. Yet again, maybe not with the specificity, but I like to look at 8th Grade or mid-90s. Both films I think are superior, because I came so close to loving this film. And while the ending does wrap up things pretty well, I would say, I definitely feel like it ends in a place where it's just like, oh, that's the ending? Yet again, I wish this movie had another scene or so to kind of nail it in and drive the point home. And also, there's tropes that we've seen in these movies before that might be quite predictable, though I was hoping they would subvert them. They did not. But yet again, they don't do it in a way that feels cheap. It does feel very real in how these situations would play out. But I definitely think that this is one of the strongest movies I saw at Sundance this year, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely be on the lookout for this one as well. I definitely see this coming out in the summer. That's just like my guess. Hoping it gets picked up pretty soon. This definitely was one of the ones to make some of the biggest waves at the festival, and I think that is going to warrant its success later on and its own theatrical release And I'm very much looking forward to that. I might even go see this again with some friends, because this is definitely one that I would be more than pleased to rewatch. And I really can't wait to see what Sean Wang does next. I mean, he must have been having a hell of a week. You know, he premieres his debut feature film at Sundance and then gets nominated for an Oscar on top of it. It's pretty incredible. And yeah, definitely be on the lookout for this film, and definitely be on the lookout for Sean Wang. And yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on the movies I saw at Sundance 2024. Let me know if you saw any in person or online, of course. You know, would love to have a chat about it. Chat about your thoughts on some of these movies specifically. And of course, smash the like button and subscribe if you're coming here for the first time. Going to be a lot more movie reviews soon, I think, once things start to kind of smooth out. Still a lot of ideas that I have that I'm trying to implement, and I will definitely be working to get those videos out to you sometime soon. But thank you for tuning in to this Sundance episode this year. I'm really grateful I got the opportunity to see these films, and I'm definitely looking forward to Sundance next year. So yeah, guys, take it easy for now, and I'll talk to you more movies soon.